This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi Glatstein. As we prepare for the Yom Tov of Shavuos, we all know on the second day of Shavuos we lay in Megillas Rus. One of the reasons is because Megillas Rus talks about the lineage of David HaMelech, who our tradition is he was born and passed away on Shavuos. I want to remind everyone what we learned in the past, and for those who are listening to the Shiur, to gain the maximum from the Shiur, I refer you back to a Shiur called The Fluidity and Exclusivity of the Oral Law that we learned once upon a time. And I just want to bring you right back into it. In Megillas Rus, we have Boaz offers the goyal, the redeemer, named Pliny Almoini, to perform the mitzvah of Yibum on Rus, whereupon the goyal responds, no thank you. Right? Remember, what does he say? In number 3 he says, Vayomer hagoyal, lo yuchal ligoli, I cannot redeem, I'm not able to. Pen ashchis es nachalasi, lest I destroy my inheritance, which Rashi says inheritance refers to my children. Because he was concerned, since Rus came from Moav, there's a drasha, Layavai Amoini Mayavi B'Kal Hashem, it's a pasuk, and therefore this goyal was afraid that he'd be ruining his future generations. And we brought down the question of the Brisker Rav, the Griz, who asked, and it happens to be in number 4, even though that's not what we're discussing today's Shiur, the Brisker Rav's question was the obvious question: if he's worried that he may be destroying his children, then he's not really hitting the nail on the head. If he can't marry this woman, he should say, I don't want to redeem her, because I can't marry her. She is a Isser Lav to me. She is a Moavit. Why is he only worried about the children? Why is he not worried about him himself? And the Brisker Rav drew our attention to the Gemara Yevamos, Ayin Vavam Beis Ayin Zayin Amud Aleph, with a famous story, where after, when David HaMelech goes out to attack Goliath, Shaul wants to know who is he. Is he from Peretz? Is he from Zorach? Shaul sees signs of Melucha, and Doeg says, before you ask whether he is Roy for Malchus, you should ask whether he's Roy to marry into mainstream Judaism. And a big fight erupted. Avner said, what do you mean? There's a drasha, Mayavi v'loi Mayavis. Doeg said, oh yeah? So then maybe we can marry a Mamzeres, and Layave Mamzer v'loi Mamzeres, maybe we could marry a Mitzres. And it went back and forth, and they didn't know what to do. Whereupon the Gemara says they were about to disqualify David HaMelech until a man by the name of, it says Amosa ben Yeser, and the Gemara discusses who exactly is Amosa ben Yeser. It says he was the son of Avigail Bas the Nachash. Bas the Nachash. And the Gemara says, who is this talking about? The Nachash is a reference to Yishai, who was such a tzaddik he never sinned. The only reason he died is because of the snake bite, because of the original curse of mankind that every human being has to die. And Yishai had a son, David, and he had a daughter, Avigail. Not to be confused with David's wife, Avigail, who was first married to a different man. Yishai had a daughter, Avigail. Avigail was married to Yeser. Yeser had a son, Amasa. Who stands up to defend David? Yeser. Okay? It wasn't Amasa, it was Yeser. And Yeser says, Kach mikoblani mi bezdinoi shel Shmuel haramasi, amoini v'loi amoinis, mayavi v'loi mayavis. Says the Brisker Rav, what we see from this Gemara is the following principle. And that put the matter to rest. That silenced the matter. You see from this Gemara a rule that the Rambam actually enunciates, and we in Hilchos Mamrim, and that is, any time a Bezdin issues a ruling based on a drasha, a later Bezdin could come along and say, we darshan differently. What if they're not greater? They don't have to be greater. Ein lecha shoifet ela bayomim ahim. Whoever the Bezdin is at that time, they have the authority and the right to disagree with any earlier drasha, even if it was a drasha of a Navi, even if it was a drasha of a greater authority. If it's a matter of exegesis, a later Bezdin could argue. However, what Yeser is saying is, Kach mekablani mi bezdino shel Shmuel haramasi. This is not a drasha. What is it? It's halacha l'Moshe miSinai. And in fact, we read the Rambam The Rambam could be found in Hilchos Ishus, right? Hilchos Isurei Bia. Hilchos Isurei Bia, number 8, where the Rambam says in Perek Yud Beis Halacha Yud Ches that the Isur of marrying Moav and the permissibility of marrying the females is not a drasha, it's what? Halacha l'Moshe Misinai. Halacha l'Moshe Misinai, nobody could argue on. No later authority could argue on it. So therefore, says the Brisker Rav, beautiful. The goyal, when he's offered the possibility of marrying this woman, he said, look, Boaz, I trust you that you want to darshan Moavi v'loy Moavis. You're the Gadol Hadar, and in this generation, if I marry her, I'll be doing the right thing. But I'm afraid, and rightfully so, because of what happened, that later courts will disagree with your decision, and they're going to darshan lo yavai Moavi v'gam Moavis, lo yavai Amoni v'gam Amonis, and they're going to disqualify my children. He wasn't worried about himself because he had the psak of Boaz, but he was worried about future generations. That's where we start today's shiur. Okay? This morning I was in a great dilemma what we should discuss. We were going to learn Sefer Zechariah, but my mind was completely preoccupied with this idea that the halacha that you're allowed to marry a Moavis is a halacha l'Moshe Misinai, and it's not a drasha. Why? Because we did leave out a section yesterday, and that's what I want to bring to your attention today, and with that we begin. Take a look at number 6.
But we also say this about Rashi. Rashi Darshan says this, but it doesn't indicate it.
Rashi doesn't say it's halacha l'Moshe Misinai. Rashi says the word ta, ve'amoni v'la'amonis, mayav v'la'mayavis. Look in the Chassam Sofer, and this is the question I want to start with today. Remember, we spoke out from the Gemara. The Gemara says that when Yeser stood up to say Kach mikablani mi beis dino shel shmor haramasi, the Gemara asks, Umi mehemen, why are you believing Yeser? After all, don't we know there's a rule that Rabbi Abba said in the name of Rab, any Talmid Chacham that paskins the halacha, if before the situation arises, we listen to him. But if he paskins it only when the situation arises, we don't trust him. And Tosfos explains, if the Talmid Chacham has an invested interest in the outcome, we can't trust the Talmid Chacham when he paskins the Maisa. And Yeser was Noigei Abadavar. Why? He's married to Avigail. Avigail is the daughter of Yishai. So if Shkoyach, he's kashering David, because he wants his own wife to be kasher. So the Gemara says, he's different. Why is he different? Because the Bezin of Shmuel Haramasi was around. So we could have just checked with them. Taka Shmuel, did you say that this is the halacha that you're allowed to marry Moavis? And therefore, since there was a certain accountability to this psak, right? Since we're able to verify it, we don't have to, but since we can rely on him because he knows we can always check it out. So ask the Chassam Sofer, beautiful question. If the Gemara asks, how could we trust Yeser when he issued a psak regarding the kashrus of David? Then why don't we ask the same question on Boaz? Boaz paskind that Rus is mutter, lavei b'kahal. Hey Boaz, who are you paskining for? You're paskining for yourself. Is it noigei you? Absolutely. 3 seconds later they get married. So why don't we ask Boaz, how could we trust you about this psak? There's a halacha that if a Talmid Chacham paskins, im loy koydem ma'isa, if the ma'isa is happening right now, we can't trust the Talmid Chacham.
But wasn't Boaz paskening for Ploni Almoni, and then when Ploni Almoni said no, then it affected him.
Okay.
But his original intention was for Ploni Almoni.
Okay, we'll see about that. We'll see about that. That might not be bad.
But also say Yeser paskin. Once you have
Yeser only paskin. We could only accept Yeser because we could have gone to Shmuel. So Shmuel's not around anymore. This is a few generations later.
And also Yeser, you could.
Yeser, you could go to Shmuel. Boyaz, Shmuel's not around anymore.
You could have gone to people.
There's nobody. We don't know. No,
once you heard from Yeser, you could have.
Yeser's not here.
No, whoever there were people around, he could have asked them around.
But it doesn't say that Boaz isn't even invoking what Yeser says. So that's a kasha of Chassam Sofer. Says Chassam Sofer, are you ready for this? The only time we say don't trust the Talmid Chacham when he says something, when he's Nageya, that's if he says, yeah, there's halacha l'Moshe Sinai that I could do this. Shkoyach. Now what? We're supposed to believe you. It's relevant to you. You're invested in it, and you're telling us you have a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Now what? What should we do? We're going to go up to Har Sinai and check it? So therefore we can't trust the Talmid Chacham. And that's why the Gemara asked we couldn't trust Yasser, if not for the fact we could verify it with Shmuel. But Boaz is not saying he has a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Boaz is saying we have a drasha. Wait a second.
But if you do that, then
The Boaz is saying that he had a drasha? Now we don't have any contradictions against that. The only person who claimed he had halacha l'Moshe Sinai is Yasser. And Yasser proclaimed this a few generations later. Now, excuse me, this is in the time of Boaz. L'chayra, definitely Shmuel. Maybe it could have been verified, but that's what the Chassam Sofer says. That this chisaron, that you cannot trust the Talmid Chacham when he's relevant to the issue, that's only if he invokes halach l'Moshe Sinai, not if he invokes a drasha. But what's confusing me is that if the Rambam knows that this halacha of Amoini v'lay Amoinis, Mayavi v'lay Mayavis is halacha l'Moshe Sinai, then why doesn't Boaz know this?
Yeah, if you had Shmuel knew it, so you have a Masorah.
And Shmuel knew it. Shmuel was around after Boaz.
Yeah, so they didn't forget it.
And what do you mean he was saying if Midrasha was Boaz mistaken? I mean, obviously Pliny Almoini thought it was a drasha, and that's why he was worried about his children. He was worried about it being overturned. But Boaz didn't know. And then the Chassam Sofer says another answer. Chassam Sofer says,
Rebbe, you could also ask, if Boaz did know that it was halacha l'Moshe
he should have told
He should have told.
You have nothing to worry about.
Then you have nothing to worry about. Otherwise, he's real no gay, but because he would want Rus.
That's a valid hara. Why wouldn't he say? What do you mean you worry about your children? So we have halacha l'Moshe Sinai, and it cannot be overturned. Chassam Sofer gives another answer, and he says there's something called migu. That migu says once you're believed about A, we'll believe you about B also. So Chassam Sofer says that Boaz is paskening not only about Moavi but about Amoini also, and he's saying Amoini v'lay Amoinis. That he's not nogei b'davar. He's not having any intention to marry an Amoinis. And once he's believed L'gabe Amoinis, we could believe him L'gabe Moavis also. To which he asked, well, if that's the case, then we could have said the same thing in the times of David also, that why can't we trust Yeser? Once we believe him about Amoinis, we should believe him about Moavis as well. Ruvain Margolis was a very interesting personality. First of all, Ruvain Margolis has dozens and dozens of svarim. He was a baki b'chol Torah kula, and he never really had an official capacity as a rav or a rashiva. What did he do? He was a librarian. And he wrote the authoritative sefer on Masechta Sanhedrin, Margolias Hayam. People think, it goes Hayam hundreds of years ago. It was written in the past century. And he had the world's largest collection of Gedolim pictures. There's only one picture he was missing. He didn't have his own picture. He's a very interesting personality. I don't think he ever had children. And Rabbi Margolis was a baki in Kabbalah. And he wrote a sefer HaMikra v'HaMasorah, which we have in the Shiur number 7. And he also talks about this idea that the halacha of Amoini v'lay Amoinis, Mayavi v'lay Mayavis, was a very unclear halacha. Throughout history, it was always shrouded in mystery. It was always questioned. And he brings many examples throughout history. First of all, we learned Doeg challenged the halacha. He says David HaMelech is not mutar lavei bakal. And Shaul fell for it. That means Shaul did not know the halacha. Shaul, who only did one avera his whole life, he was Mishichma Ulamala, Gavaya Me'al Kol Am. Shaul HaMelech, he didn't know this halacha. More than that, Sheva ben Bichri, remember Sheva ben Bichri? When he persuaded the people to move away from David HaMelech, he declared, Ein lanu chelak b'David v'lo nachal ben Yishai. Meaning, You Jewish people, why are you getting involved with this King David? He has bad lineage. Would you let your daughter go out with someone? The shadchan says, I have a really great guy for you. The only thing is, the great-grandmothers, I don't know what happened in the field over there. They don't like to talk about it. And by the way, the great-great-grandfather, well, Yehuda and Tamar was before the Torah was given, but, they don't like to talk about that either. And then they have this Zedalite who lived with his 2 daughters, but, nobody remembers that anymore. Won't be able to buy a shidduch, right? So, but Sheva ben Bichri brings up the fact that David HaMelech's lineage is tainted. Yeravam ben Nevat, when he breaks away from Malchus Beis David, what does he say? Re'ei Beischa David. He highlights the yichus. More than that, Pliny Almoini. And he suggests that the reason why this halacha was not well known, you can take a look in the 4th paragraph, is because you could just imagine the Gedolim who lived in Eretz Yisrael. You think they want Jewish men? Who needs to marry a nice Jewish girl? We'll just go to Ammon and Moav and convert them. They make better housewives. They didn't want it to become widespread, where Jews just go ahead and convert people from Ammon and Moav and marry them. There are communities today. You could go to their Sephardic communities that you cannot marry Gerim, right?
Yeah, the
Mashadi, right? Right? They have laws. They have unstated or maybe even stated laws. You can't marry Gerim. They want to preserve the purity of their lineage, but there's no issur to marry a Gerim. Yeah, but. So he suggests that perhaps the Chachamim of the Doors did not want this halacha to be so well known, and therefore it remains very hidden, not even from the leaders. But then he offers, similar to what Mr. Zolkin said, I think it's the beginning of, you have a Rus? The beginning of the parak says, Uhu Vayaz, one of the nicest trup in all the trup. Allah Hashar Vayeshav Sham Munach Zarka Munach Segal. Boaz went up to the gate and he sat there. Vehine. The pasuk says, Hagoyal Oiver. Whenever you see the word hine means a surprise. What does behold mean? In English, nobody ever says behold. In Lashon HaKodesh,
something unanticipated.
Unanticipated, like Ubaboiker v'hine Leah.
Right.
What? Leah?
Right.
That's not what I thought last night. Hine means a surprise. Why is Boaz running to the gate? The gate means the Bezdin. And he got there, and then the goyal is there. Why did he run there in the morning to get there before the goyal? The answer is because he knew that ultimately he's going to be the one to marry Rus. But if he waits to paskin on the issue when it becomes relevant to him, they're not going to believe him. So he had to preempt the goyal coming to paskin, to establish halacha even before the goyal gets there. He's some paskining in general in the Welt Arain. Moavi, v'loi Moavis, it's nagea you. Oh, very good. He paskin, it's mutter. He didn't buy it, and then he could rely on it for himself.
But I mean, the still question is, if it was halacha Moshe Sinai, what was he worried about?
Again,
Geir b'David doesn't matter.
No, that's the chiddush of the Chassam Sofer, that for halacha Moshe Sinai it does matter. If you claim it's halacha Moshe Sinai,
then it has to be before the
it
event.
has to be. Then it has to be before.
Why?
What?
Why? It's a halacha Moshe.
Because you have no accountability for halacha Moshe Sinai. In other words, but Boaz wasn't saying halacha Moshe Sinai. According to the Chassam Sofer, Boaz was saying that it was a drush. Again, let's set forth clearly the answers to the question. The question was that how can we trust Boaz to pass him out saying that's nageh him? One answer is that if, according to the Chassam Sofer, Boaz was just giving a drasha. When you give a drasha, then even if it's nageh you rely on you, because if you say it's halacha Moshe Sinai, now what are we supposed to do with that? We're going to have to rely on you. But if you say it's a drasha, we could challenge it, and therefore we believe you even if it's Negea. That's one answer. Some say for Boaz was saying a drush. Another answer is once we believe him for Amoin, we could believe him for Moav. And a third answer suggested by Reuben Margolis is because he preempted the case. He paskin Amoini v'lay Amoinis, Mayavi v'lay Mayavis, even before the case arose.
Still doesn't answer the question, Rabbi, though we know by the time of Shmuel, which is a couple of generations later, that they knew it was halacha l'Moshe Sinai.
Right.
Because that's what the Gemara
Yes, sir, knew. Nobody else knew.
So Boaz didn't know that it was halacha. Why do we have to go through this whole...
Again, according to this third answer, Boaz also knew it was halacha l'Moshe Sinai, but nevertheless, and that's why he had to preempt the case. But what's troubling me is, again, like we mentioned before, clearly, according to the Rambam, it is halacha l'Moshe Sinai, and the Brisker Rav learns that's what Yeser was saying, it's halacha l'Moshe Sinai. What was Boaz saying? Well, the Chassam Sofer said in one answer that he was saying it's a drasha. So according to that answer, the Chassam Sofer, you have to say Boaz did not know that halacha l'Moshe Sinai, right? Or he did know, but he that's why he had to preempt a case. But even if you want to say Boaz knew it's halacha l'Moshe Sinai, I'll tell you what's really troubling me. Is there a Gemara in Ksubas here? That's what they're learning in Daf Yomi. I need a Ksubas very much. I found this morning in the Chuvas of the Chavos Yair. So, Yaakov, you asked me yesterday how many halacha l'Moshe Sinai there are? Well, there's no list in the Rambam. I just happened to see in the Shavuos of Chuvas Chavos Yair, Simon Kuf Tzadi Beis, he counts all the halacha l'Moshe Sinai's 61. So I'm looking here, and he discusses what halacha l'Moshe Sinai means. Does it always mean the same thing? Maybe it means different. And I'm looking through, is one of them Mayavi v'loy Mayavis, Amoni v'loy Amonis?
Oh, he gives you the list.
He gives you a list in many, many pages. And Baruch Hashem, I found it at the expense of my kids coming late to school. But I couldn't help myself.
What are your priorities?
In number, only a few minutes. In number 54, he says, Amoini v'lay Amoinis. He quotes the Rambam, and now we have on number 8, right? But the Rambam in Hilchos Yisurei Biyah, the Rambam says the drasha of Amoini v'lay Amoinis is halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Says the Chavos here, v'lo yadati minole. I don't know where the Rambam got it from. Why? Because the Gemara in Yevamos doesn't say it's halacha l'Moshe Sinai. It says kach mekoblani mi beis dinai shel Shmuel. That's not halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Okay, so you have to say that the Rambam feels that it means that what?
But that's
halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Maybe the reason why the Rambam feels that way is otherwise, how would he put the issue to rest? Now, I would say, you know how the Rambam knows? The Rambam knows, because since the Rambam's opinion is that anything which is midrasha, a later Bezin could challenge. So when Yeser gets up and says, I heard from the Bezin of Shor Masi, this drasha, you know what Daik should have said? Big spiel. I argue on him. Yep, Bezin darshan that way. It must be, he said something that put the matter to rest, which is what? Halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Says Chavos Yair, it comes out then that if it was halacha l'Moshe Sinai, that this halacha l'Moshe Sinai haya nishkach meishal ubezdin v'chol hadar hahu, and that's why they argued about it al drasha until Yeser HaYisraeli came in and girded his sword.
But wasn't Shmuel around at the time of Shaul? He says to me, Divrei Shmuel. So I mean, it's not like we're talking many generations before or after. Why wouldn't Shaul know it?
Shaul didn't know it. Shaul didn't. But then he says maybe they really did know it, but Doeg was just instigating. But the Chavos Yair seems to be bothered by the following question: how could it be that Shaul didn't know the halacha l'Moshe Sinai, and nobody else knew it, and it comes out? Did Boaz know it? Did Boaz know it was halacha l'Moshe Sinai? And I want to bring up the following issue. It was halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Doesn't anybody remember the Gemara in Ksubis? The Gemara in Ksubis says, how do you know you need 10 people for Shavuot brachos? Shenemar, it's a pasuk in Rus. Vayikach asara anashim miziknei ha'ir. Boaz took how many people? Vayomer shavu pai. Why does he need 10 people? Because he's getting married. Shavuot brachos. And Rabbi Avo says no, from a different source. What is Rav says the Gemara? And Rav Nachman, who doesn't learn it from the pasuk of Vayikach. So, and Rabbi Avo, what does he do with the pasuk that Boaz took 10 men? Nah, he didn't do it for Shavuot brachos. Hahu mi boile lemidrash amoini v'loy amoinis mayavi v'loy mayavis. You know why he needed 10 men? To make a drasha. The Gemara asks.
We need 10 men for a drasha. Where do we know that from? Why do he need 10? L'farsume milsa. He needed to publicize a drasha. So, isn't it clear from this Gemara that Boaz was darshaning? Right.
He's darshaning, and he needs 10 people to darshan. So definitely Boaz either did not know the halacha l'Moshe Sinai, but then what? Boaz just made a mistake, and Rav Nachman Shitas, he made such a mistake, he called 10 people to darshan. Something's very fishy over here.
Wasn't it a medrash that the 10 people he called was because he wanted to be sure that he had a bezdin, that everybody would agree that it was okay for him to marry Rus?
Yeah, I mean, he wanted to publicize it.
It wasn't just him, that he got the approval of the bezdin that he could marry Rus.
I don't know, the Gemara says it was the farsume mosa, but listen to this.
It was a wedding.
I want to suggest the following. I couldn't find anyone who says it, and if it's not correct, Yibon Shem should be Michael. But tell me what you think. The Rambam in Hakdama to the Parsha Mishnayos, he talks about there are two categories of Torah Shabbat Peh. There's halacha l'Moshe Sinai, and there's halachas that are learned with the Yud Gimel Midah Shatar Nidrashas Behem. Halacha l'Moshe Sinai is Hashem told Moshe tefillin have to be black. Why? Where does it say it in the Chumash? It doesn't say it anywhere in the Chumash. It's not a source. And then there are other things which are derived through the Yud Gimel Midah Shatar Nidrashas Behem. Now we learned that depending what the source is, they have different halachas. Something that the halacha is halacha l'Moshe Sinai, nobody could argue on. A later bezin can't argue on it. It's finished, it's black and white. Later bezin could argue on drasha. On the other hand, if somebody says something's from a drasha, even if it's nageya him, you have to believe him. If someone says something's halacha l'Moshe Sinai, if it's nageya him, we don't believe him. So they have different categories. I want to suggest that there is one halacha that is both categories. Huh? How's that possible? I'll tell you why. The fact that tefillin is black, it's halacha l'Moshe Sinai. You don't have... Nowhere in the Chumash does it say it does have to be black. Nowhere in the Chumash does it say it doesn't have to be black. It's a undiscussed point, and therefore the Rebbe Shalom told Moshe, by the way, even though it doesn't say in the Chumash, I'm telling you it has to be black. But when it comes to this halacha of amoini v'lay amoinis, mayavi v'lay mayavis, we have a little problem. Because you can't just say halacha l'Moshe Sinai, you can marry a mayavis. But the Chumash says you can't marry. It says lo yavai amoini umayavi b'kal Hashem. You can't have a halacha l'Moshe Sinai that contradicts the Chumash. The Chumash says you can't marry into Ammon and Moav.
That's the lashon of the...
And how could the... So you'll say, well, it doesn't say specifically the ladies. What are you talking about? When it says mamzer, it means the ladies. When it says mitzri, it means the ladies as well. So why would you assume Moavi and Ammon is different? So, yes, you have halacha l'Moshe Sinai. But once you have halacha l'Moshe Sinai, now you have to be able to darshan the pasuk. So not only is it halacha l'Moshe Sinai, it's also a drasha.
Why do you need the drasha?
Because without the drasha, then the halacha l'Moshe Sinai is contradicting the pasuk.
Sorry.
You can't contradict the Torah Shabbat Peh is wonderful. It can't contradict the pasuk. The Chachamim can never say, for example, there's a famous thing. you don't take the shofar on Shabbos. You don't take a lulav and esrog on Shabbos. You don't. Why do you do bris milah on Shabbos? Answer is that the Taz says that sukkah, shofar. You know why you don't blow on Shabbos? Because nowhere does the Torah say blow shofar on Shabbos. It just says blow shofar. The Chachamim could come along and say, but not on Shabbos. But the Torah says you do milah on Shabbos. The Chachamim can't say no, you don't. If the Torah writes Lo yavai mayavi b'kal Hashem, and the simple meaning of that is men and women, and the proof is Dayeg asked. Amoni mitzvah Lo yavai mitzri, it means mitzvahs also. Lo yavai mamzer, it means mamzer also. So if it says Lo yavai mayavi, it means mayavis. So very nice halacha Moshe Sinai, but we have black and white. You can't do it. So you know what you need? The halacha Moshe Sinai tells you that we have a tradition that you must make a drasha. It's almost halacha Moshe Sinai that you make a drasha. So was Boaz wrong for making a drasha? He wasn't wrong. There is a drasha of Amoni v'lei Amonis. There is a drasha of Mayavi v'lei Mayavis. That's why he needed 10 people. He wasn't doing something that we look back in history. Boaz, you're wrong. What are you making a drasha? Don't you know the Kabbalah from Shmuel Haramasi? Boaz says, I'm not saying whether he knew it or not. Maybe he did know it. But he still needed to make the drasha. Because it's not enough to have a halacha l'Moshe Sinai on the din. If you have a halacha l'Moshe Sinai that tefillin are black, fine. Torah doesn't say they're orange. Torah doesn't say anything. And maybe we could even take it a step further. So, okay. Did Boaz know halacha Moshe Sinai? I don't know. I don't know for sure. But the fact that the Gemara in Ksuba says that he made a drasha doesn't mean to me that he didn't know it was halacha Moshe Sinai. Could be he knew it, but you still need to make a drasha. Pliny Almoini says, oh, you're making a drasha. Then a later Bezdin is going to argue on it. What Pliny Almoini didn't know is, yes, it's a drasha, and yes, a later Bezdin could argue on the drasha, but not this drasha, because this drasha is backed by a halacha l'Moshe Sinai.
But then he should have told, then Boaz should have told Pliny Almoni that. If he's saying, I'm making this drasha because it contradicts the Parsha.
So maybe either he didn't say, or he had a reason not to say, or maybe he didn't know. He maybe didn't know. But the fact that, so maybe, in other words, the fact that he made a drasha is not necessarily an indication he didn't know it was halacha Moshe Sinai. And the fact that the Gemara in Ksuvas records this historic drasha doesn't mean it's not halacha Moshe Sinai. And the fact that Rashi quotes this drasha, I mean, your whole life, before you saw the Rambam, did you really think it was halacha Moshe Sinai? Everybody thinks it's a drasha. Amoini v'lei amoinis, mayavi v'lei mayavis. So it could be this is a rare bird, a rare exception, where yes, it's halacha Moshe Sinai, and normally by very definition, halacha Moshe Sinai is not a drasha. But this, you need to be able to read the pasuk. In other words, the halacha Moshe Sinai carries with it a special way to read the pasuk. And then let's take it one step further. In the times of Avram Avinu, they did not touch Ammon and Moav. Right? Like the Shachal HaTorah brings down. That's why Avram Yitzchak did not marry the daughters of Lot. So he said, does that mean that the Shachal HaTorah argues on the Rambam? The Rambam holds his halacha Moshe Sinai and he holds it was a drasha? Say maybe not. The halacha Moshe Sinai was not there yet, but the Torah was there. And the Torah says, Lo yavai amoni mayavi, and they darshaned v'gam mayavis. In other words, there are two different traditions that are both in fact true. In the times of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they would not go near Ammon and Moav. And in fact, Machlon and Kilyon, okay, so that doesn't fit in necessarily, because Machlon and Kilyon, according to what we learned in the Shachal HaTorah, and if you want to know what the Shach says, again, I refer you back to the Shiur, the fluidity and exclusivity of the oral law. But there, it's brought down that Machlon and Kilyon were punished for marrying Rus, because at that point in time, they darshaned v'gam Moavis. What do you mean? I thought it's halacha l'Moshe Sinai. So apparently, according to the Shachal Torah, they were not aware of that halacha l'Moshe Sinai. But that's also very difficult. That
So if you're not aware, you get punished?
No, why didn't they make
the
it?
drasha of that period of time was v'gam Moavis. V'gam
We
Moavis.
spoke about it yesterday, but it means, even if they don't know, so you're guilty? You're talking to the punishment?
No, they did know. The poskim paskin at that time that you can't do it.
Oh, you can't.
So they knew they couldn't. But basically what we have is the following. The Rambam says it's halacha l'Moshe Sinai. The Shachal Torah says it was all a matter of drasha. Avram darshaned it to include females. Machlon and Killian in their times, they knew it included females. Is the Rambam and the Shachal Torah arguing? It would seem that they are, unless there's an idea that there is a halacha l'Moshe Sinai, that there's a drasha. But on the very least, what about the fact that the Gemara in Ksuba says that Boaz darshaned Amani v'layas Mayav v'layas? Does that mean Boaz didn't know? Boaz didn't know what the Rambam knows? Maybe not. Maybe there seems to be something unique about this halacha of Amani v'loy Mayavis, Mayavi v'loy Mayavis. That while on one hand it's halacha l'Moshe Sinai, throughout history we find Gedolei Hador darshaning it. That perhaps indicates that this is a unique situation where even though it's halacha l'Moshe Sinai, we need a drasha as well to be able to read the simple meaning of the pasuk. Rabbi Isai, have a great day.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.